the grants and a lot of the money, I mean, you mentioned earlier about requirements, but I mean, the government is for the people, by the people, right? Like, I mean, it's the purpose is funding and federal, we put taxes there to equally fund all Americans, right? And the diversity that's there. So I'm wondering, how do we, there's the diversity that's the requirement in the grants, but then there aren't really requirements per se on that kind of all the way downstream within the infrastructure side of it, right?
Yeah. So I'm absolutely going to answer that. I wanted to real quick say about leaders, that everyone can be a leader. Like, obviously, Brian, you are a leader and you are doing a great job with this. I'm a leader in my small group, right? And someone out in the field might be a leader amongst their 3 friends, right? So when we talk about leadership making the change, it's not just like, oh, I'm going to sit back because I'm not the, CEO of the company. You can think about what your circle is, what your group is, where you kind of have that position where people listen to you. So it's not just on the Bryans and the Fields, like, everyone has a part to play, and you might not think you're a leader, in the broad sense, but maybe you are, in a small, even in your family, right? Like, these are, discussions for everywhere. But to that, Nick, when we talk about moving down the line, it does require states right now. So when we're thinking of BEAD, right, this is where a lot of this talk of the diversity is, and, finding these things. And it says in there that is a requirement of grantees and sub-grantees, right? So once the states get the money, they're going to open up grant programs. And it is in the statute also a requirement of sub-grantees. So yes, the states have to do it, but, the applicants have to do it as well. I think what the challenge is that you're going to have people who say, oh yeah, I'm doing X, Y, Z, and aren't really, right? They want the money to build their network, and, they're going to say what they need to on the application to get it, which is, a shame that we have applications like that and people doing that. And so I would just challenge everyone to actually take those questions seriously. I think sometimes there's a tendency to kind of, roll your eyes at it, but, there are people out there doing the work, and it does take work to do that. And I remember talking with Brian about a program that goes to community colleges and trains field technicians. And Brian was all about it, and it was great. And so when you come to that, you can say, yeah, I actually, am doing stuff with this. And you need to actually do it, because that's what's going to make the change. So, it is a requirement. Are people going to actually follow through? They are then required to report on that when you're reporting, I think biannually, on the work you're doing. They are asking for a list of your employees. So they're going to check up on it. Are they going to take away your funds if you don't have, a certain number of apprentices or a certain number of formerly incarcerated people? I don't know. But, I think it is now going up to kind of a broader view, a real shift in the industry, right? And I think the conversation needs to be like, let's take this seriously. Let's not just see it as a part of the application and come up with a crafty answer.
Is there any specificity that they're really trying to push? Because, I mean, sometimes that becomes a challenge, right? Because, without defined detail, obviously it's left to the respondent to craft it as they interpret it, right? And then sometimes too much specificity also could be challenging also in a particular area as well, right? So it's a balance, right?
If you're in, rural Montana and you're applying for this and they want a certain number of, a diverse population, you just might not have that around you, and are you going to be then disqualified because of this?
Right.
So I think in it, there is a degree of specificity when they talk about workforce, and they give lots of examples, which I think is good. And I think that, it can be something where you have to be creative, right? And I would bring this back to when we think about diversity and what is it? And what does it look like? It is many, many things. And they do a great job of pointing that out in their digital equity grant, which, translates over, where they have that big list of what a diverse and what a underrepresented population is, right? And it's not just women and people of color. And so I think they give enough room that you can kind of look around and say, okay, maybe, we don't have any people of color in this community that we can recruit from. Like, that is a sad fact in some areas. But do you have veterans? Do you have formerly incarcerated people? What are you doing? And there are organizations out there that those kinds of people, I don't want to say kinds of people, but that those individuals belong to, so are you going to a veterans area and seeing who's available, right? And sometimes it's things as simple as that. If you're saying, we have some of our staff, going to these meetings and talking to people about the work we do, so I think there can be many permutations of it, of how you do that work. And so they leave some room for that. But, again, it is, how can you interpret that and how can you think creatively about it, which can then be the difficult for some people. If you're not used to that way of thinking, it can be hard to come up with those ideas.
Hey, Megan, I think that's where competition is now. That's what happens. So when you start to perform, it's not what the other people are doing. It's now, because Bonfire, and I was at the last meeting, your ratio male female is strong. There was a lot of females in that room relative to the conference I walked through with Brian. So again, now
I've been to those ones.
Yeah, but the numbers start. So this is what we're doing. So again, when you go in and you're able to hit some benchmarks, when you're able to score some touchdowns, you're not saying what everybody else is not doing, but if people are not, we're checking the boxes, we're making stuff up. Now you're putting in bids where, we've got veterans, we've got, you start to show, to lay down markers, right? That, we take this serious. So now the people that are not doing it, it becomes apparent. It really becomes apparent. Then it shifts back to the state agency. They go, we really need, no, okay, you really didn't mean it, right? Okay, so next time I go vote. So there's some accountability. It does take time. There's some accountability where now, hey, this group, I know what they said, but when Bonfire comes to the table, not only do they have diversity, but they're actively going into you see what I'm saying? So they're actively going into the community.
Actively and being intentional in it,
and
right? It's not just happenstance to like, oh, great, a person of color applied, let's hire them, right? That you're intentionally seeking people at HBCUs.
Correct.
Like, that is the difference. And when you are competing and it's at that end and, someone has an equally great project with equally great budget, but you're doing that step more of diversity, you're going through.